first is I have some thoughts for you guys that I will be sharing with you. Just things that have been on my mind, sort of new thoughts over the past week and some old thoughts. Then I will take questions from the audience. Usually what I like to do there is I'll take 4 or 5 questions, and I'm not going to answer them individually, but what I will do is I'll answer them sort of thematically. Because what's really interesting about pickup, really interesting about life, is that a lot of times very different notions or different ideas sometimes come from the same theme. So maybe one person has approach anxiety, another person has like trouble pulling or has flakiness on their phone numbers, and a lot of times it's not separate issues. It's one underlying cause. It's sort of like the idea that when you're doing medicine, instead of trying to treat every single symptom, you try and treat the root cause or treat the root unhealthiness that's going on there. So let's try and take a holistic approach, answer a bunch of questions sort of as though they're one question, really hit on common themes. So I'll take questions from the audience. And then, as you all know, we're broadcasting live to the world. So I'm going to take questions from the social media audience as well. Anyone who wants to send me questions can send them to me on Twitter @RSDTodd or on Facebook, facebook.com/RSDTodd. So those would be the different ways that you can get a hold of me to give me the questions. We'll take a number of questions and just keep going for as long as we can with that. All right, so what's been on my mind the last week? Well, it's interesting because the world of pickup has gotten a lot of new viewers in the last week, and it reminds me of what it was like when I first came into the world of pickup. I found the world of pickup by accident, actually. I was looking up comedians and jokes, and then I found a site that had like funny jokes and pickup lines. I'm like, oh, these are funny, these pickup lines. And I did a search for pickup lines, found a pickup forum, and started studying and learning from there. And it's really interesting for me because it was something I was really proud of. Up until the age of 18, I had been, a very shy kid. I hadn't had a girlfriend, I kissed once. And taking charge of this area of my life was something that, like I said, I was really, really proud of. I was really happy I was doing it, and it really pushed me outside of my comfort zone in a lot of really good ways. But at the same time, it was something that I sort of like inherently understood. It was like my own little thing. I wasn't like to share it with the world because I knew that as much as I was very proud of it, I felt like I probably would be on a certain level like judged for it. And that comes from a lot of really interesting places. Which I want to talk to you guys about. A lot of it has to do with social conditioning, how we're raised, the views that we see in the media and like Hollywood and that kind of stuff. And also just sort of some fundamental ideas of what pickup is, what a relationship with a girl is, right? One of the fundamental ideas that is very central to picking up a girl or any kind of interaction or relationship with a girl is that things are always better if they quote unquote like just happen, right? If it just happens, it's better. If it seems like this very like put on, like formulaic thing, and not quite as much fun for the participants, it tends to make it a little bit clunky, right? And so a lot of what we're doing when we do cold approach pickup or just within any relationship is we're trying to create a situation where people can be really comfortable and where people can really just enjoy what's going on and not be thinking too much about, outcomes and just like go with the process, go with the experience. And it's funny because that's what pickup is, but the process of learning pickup is anything but that, right? It's the process of learning any skill. You can imagine like the first time you ever drove a car, you get in there and it's like a steering wheel and gear shift and what is this clutch thing and the mirrors, and you're overwhelmed, right? It's so much to deal with because you're not used to it. And it's very clunky, it's very logical, it feels extremely awkward. But you have to practice, right? So you've gone from sort of like, we talk about sort of unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence to then conscious competence and then unconscious competence, right? So first time you get in a car, you go from sort of unconscious to conscious incompetence, right? You don't know what the fuck's going on and you're lost. To a point of conscious competence, which is you can actually drive a car safely, but you have to be really focused on it. Like you might be at a point when you're learning where someone turns on the radio, like, no, shut that off, I can't deal with that. Right? Or, you can deal with it, but you're like reminding yourself to look in your mirrors, you're reminding yourself to look around. And then you get to a point eventually where as you're driving a car, it's no big deal. It happens naturally. And that's, it's great. Now you can drive. It's a very good thing. It's kind of the same thing with pickup. And so the process of learning pickup tends to be inherently very clunky. It tends to be a situation where you do get a little bit awkward as you get good, and you kind of have to accept that. And that awkwardness is part of the reason why people do tend to tend to like hide that they're learning pickup, and also why people do tend to get kind of a hard time for learning pickup, because you're gonna make mistakes, right? It's pretty easy to avoid embarrassment by sort of like sitting back and not talking to girls, right? I know that when I was in high school, there were a lot of like crushes on, and even girls that would have crushes on me, and I would actively avoid even mentioning that I had crushes on them. I'd actively avoid asking them out because I just didn't want to embarrass myself, right? I tell guys, you know, oh no, she's really not my type. I even had one girl that I went to like 2 weeks of effort to get her to like me. I even like learned, I had a board game class with her. I actually even learned the board game. I bought a book on the game, like learned how to do it really well, and like went back and like beat her at the board game in order to impress her. And then she asked me out, and then I didn't even follow up with that. I basically like said no when she asked me out, because the reason I was in game at the time, it wasn't to have a great experience or a great relationship with a girl. It was just for validation. It was just to prove to myself that I'm not like a loser with women and I can actually like do something, right? And so I got my validation by her liking me, and then I didn't even follow through, because again, it was easier to sit back and not take action, right? As long as you don't take action, as long as you don't take risks and take a mistake, you don't look like an idiot. As soon as you start learning, you will look like an idiot in everything, right? Any skill that you're ever gonna do, learning makes you look dumb. So you have to just kind of take that on, and that's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of sort of courage to do it, and that's why probably 90% of people that hear about pickup never go do an approach. They sit there and they're behind their computers and they like post theories and they read theories. They do this for months and months and months, and they never get out and do an approach. And that was me as well, right? The first time I finally went out to do an approach after several months, I walked around a mall for about 4 hours, and I was so scared to talk to a girl that I went home and hadn't even talked to a girl, and I felt like even a bigger loser, right? And then the second time, same story, right? Eventually, I got up the courage to talk to a shop girl. She responded relatively well, and then thankfully, thank you, shop girl, for being nice. I appreciate it. You've made my life much better. Eventually, you know, I had enough positive encouragement to keep doing, right? But it is a very difficult journey, and it is a little bit clunky. So inherently, there's this sort of resistance to those ideas. There's also a lot of resistance to ideas from friends, right? This is something I hear over and over and over again from people who get involved in the pickup community. Is they're like, this is something I'm doing, this is something I'm so proud of, it's changing my life, it's making my life better, I'm even dating great girls now, but how do I break it to my friends? Or I'd like to get my friends into pickup, how do I tell them? Or I go out with my friends and I don't want to do it near them, right? And a lot of people, for the reasons I said before, they don't want to make mistakes, are worried about this, but also a lot of people's friends actively discourage them, right? And why is that? Well, this is something that like confused me for a really long time, but over the years we've kind of figured it out. And what goes on there a lot of times is put yourself in your friend's shoes. Put yourself in the shoes of the person where you've started learning pickup, you've started stepping up, taking these risks, doing the things you really wanted and going after the things that you truly are passionate about in life. And they're sitting there on the couch eating Cheetos, right? And they have to think to themselves, well, if this is possible, if it's really possible to go out and meet that great girl that I really want to, and I'm sitting on the couch eating Cheetos, what the fuck am I doing with my life, right? As long as they don't think it's possible, as long as it's outside of their reality that this exists, they can go about eating their Cheetos and watching their TV shows, and it's totally fine. It's totally acceptable. They're comfortable, right? They don't have to step up and take all those big risks that are inherent to learning pickup. But as soon as you think to yourself, oh my God, this is possible, now what's your excuse for not doing it? As soon as you see your friend doing it, as soon as you see this guy that you grew up with that seems the same as you, bringing, you know, hot girls home and having great relationships, now how do you justify that? So I think there's this inherent urge in people, just basically for any way that you're improving yourself, but especially pickup, because it's such a, like, guys get very arrogant about it. Guys get very arrogant about basically two things. Every guy thinks that they can win a fight and can pick up a girl, right? And if you tell a guy he can't, no matter how big a loser he is, no matter how weak or scrawny he is, they believe like, no, I can win a fight, I'm tough, I won't give up, I'll go harder than you or something like that, right? And with girls, they're like, no, the reason I haven't is I just don't try. I just, you know, I'm very picky. I'm very picky about the girls, so I'm just waiting for that one girl that's worth me like talking to. There's a lot of excuses that come up, but really, you know, we all know what it is to go after what we want. We all know when it's an excuse. But yeah, it's very, very challenging to someone when they see you step up. So this is a very, very difficult thing for people to deal with. And what happens also when you get into the pickup community, which I think is really great, is there's this idea called RAS, Reticular Activation System. And basically what RAS means is that you notice things more once you're ready to notice them, or once you've been sort of like exposed to them. And the funny thing about pickup, it's a little bit like the Matrix, right, where he's offered the pills, like the red pill and the green pill or whatever, or is it red and blue, I don't know, whatever. And he takes like the Matrix pill. They're like, take me out of the Matrix pill. But the funny thing about that is you can never untake that pill. You can't untake truth, right? You can't go back and start lying to yourself again once you've taken the truth pill. And so it makes that truth pill very, very, very tempting to like shy away from it. It's very no, I don't want that. That's tough. That's hard, right? But once you do take that red pill, I think it's red, I don't know. Once you take that red pill, it's funny because you start noticing things, right? You'll start noticing other things in life. You start noticing other areas where you weren't stepping up and you can. Or you start noticing little social phenomena that you're like, oh wait, that makes sense because I understand like social proof now. I understand how that commercial is working on me psychologically. Or I understand about social pressure and I understand why I believed this certain thing before, but you know, I let people talk me out of it. And so you start to see the world in a much truer light. Similar to kind of like how if you buy like, you know, a green Toyota, all of a sudden you start noticing all the green Toyotas on the road. It's one of those things. And so it's a journey you can't untake, but it's a journey that is truth. Because that's what is pickup really. What is pickup? It's basically the search for the truth about male-female interactions, right? One of the greatest tenets in pickup, the pickup community and pickup theory is everything must be field tested. And we field tested everything, right? I field tested opening with like, you know, something very positive and complimentary. I field tested opening with something negative. I field tested jumping up to the girl, landing in front of her and saying hi. You know, I field tested, we even field tested at one point somersaulting after girls. Everything has been field tested, right? We've tried anything and everything. Over time, we started testing only things that sort of made sense and were similar to other things we've seen working. So we don't literally test every single thing, but it's all about empirical evidence. It's all about a search for truth. And it's about not hiding from what's difficult and going after what is true. So the biggest thing that I will say to anybody out there who's sort of new to pickup and just being exposed to it, because I know there are a lot of people in that category right now, is number one, understand that the journey is not easy at first. Starting the journey is one of the toughest things, but if you start, it's worth it. It's the level of truth and the level of change you can make in your life is incredible, so do it. It's a great journey. And the second thing I will say is think for yourself. Once you start down this path, there will be a lot of people discouraging you, a lot of people saying you can't do it, a lot of people saying that like trying to go outside your comfort zone, talking to a stranger is weird, is strange, is not polite, that sort of thing. Disregard that. Disregard that. Go after what you know to be true and what you want, and think for yourself. Instead of giving into the social pressure or how you want to be perceived or the opinions of others, I would say this. This is actually a quote from David Thoreau, which I really, really like. He said, "A man who is more right than his neighbors constitutes a majority of one." Right? So the point of that is think for yourself, know what's right. And obviously do take criticism. Don't be an idiot. Right? If a lot of people are saying to you, this isn't a good idea, this isn't right, do take that into consideration and think about it. But once you've formed your opinion based on that information, go with your opinion, because only you can be the authority in your own life. Okay? So that's sort of my statement about pickup and my own pickup journey, just to get you guys started and to give you guys a little bit of a framework. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take 4 to 5 questions from the audience here in the room, and I'll try and weave them into some kind of a cohesive theme, some kind of an idea overall about some of the concepts of pickup, of life, social dynamics, that sort of stuff. All right, so who has questions on anything?
I got a question. When it comes to time frame, so you go in, do an approach. Let's say you're at a bar, probably, and maybe it's early in the night a little bit. You know, you're probably not going to pull, but it spikes, and then it continually tends to go down. I don't know if it's my vibe getting nervous that it's a long time to entertain someone, to have fun with somebody. I've gotten a little better to where now I'm doing it quicker and it's working. I'm doing day 2s. Cool. But the time frame that you spend with a girl, is there a typical time frame that you think, you know what, 20 to 40 minutes, that's it.
So typical time frame, and then possibly why the interactions go down. Maybe another follow-up question. Cool. It's a good question. On questions, by the way, two things. It's one, keep them general interest, which that is. Also, let's keep them short. All right. So ideally, you should be able to phrase your question in 2 to 3 sentences at most. All right. If you can't phrase it that quickly, it's too complicated. Okay. So why does the interaction go down, and what's a typical time frame for pickup? Cool. Other questions? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Do you have tips on how to motivate myself to keep going out?
Okay. How to motivate yourself to keep going out?
Yeah.
One thing I'll say is get hornier. Right. Like sex is a good motivator, but I'll talk about like long-term motivation because that'll get you going for a while. But yeah, if you are going out, like how often are you going out in a week?
Now go quite a lot.
But you tend to get like kind of burnt out.
Yeah.
So how to keep from getting burnt out? Yeah.
Structure first date, and how to pull close on that first date.
Okay. How to structure a first date?
Like how to actually frame it so you close on that date instead of doing it on day 2.
Okay. Cool. It's like a couple more.
A couple questions from Twitter. Could you enlighten me how to cultivate grounding energy?
How to cultivate grounding energy.
Yeah.
Okay, so like how to be grounded essentially?
Yeah, essentially.
Okay.
Another one is, what is the best tip on dating?
Okay,
And
I'll take one more, it's fine. That'll be it.
what should I do if I've never kissed a girl? Should I tell her before kissing, or should I just go for the kiss and hope for the best?
Okay, cool. I actually like that last one. That last one's a pretty interesting one. We'll kind of go from there in a few different directions. So there's this idea in pickup. I talked a little bit in my little preamble about like unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, unconscious competence. So what you're talking about here in this KISS question is essentially you are in a situation of you're consciously incompetent. You know that you don't know how to kiss a girl. You know that you're not there. And so you're wondering how to handle the situation. And there are different situations, there are different cases of this. One case would be where being genuine and open is the right thing. And you just want to tell her where you're at, go ahead and do it. And the nice thing about that is that it could be very sweet. It could be very endearing. You could build a deep connection with the girl, the fact that you did open up to her. On the other hand, you have to look at what are the characteristics that a woman typically sees in a man and typically is attracted to in a man. So those are characteristics of dominance, leadership, assurance, etc. So you're in this kind of weird paradox, right? You're in this paradox where on the one hand, you really don't know where you're going. On the other hand, you want to appear like you do and you want to convey certain things. And in general, whenever you're faced with a situation like this, I would look at what are the consequences, what are the pros and what are the cons. So in this case, the worst negative of just trying for the kiss and doing the best you can is maybe you embarrass yourself a little bit. So in this case, what I would recommend is a strategy of kind of fake it till you make it, right? Just act like you know what you're doing on the kiss. If you want to go online, look up videos on how to kiss a girl, talk to your friends, etc. Get the best information you can. But most guys who haven't kissed a girl, you probably can kind of figure it out if you want to. You can kind of figure it out on your own and just do your best. And the awkwardness of having kind of a weird kiss is probably less and will detract less from the overall experience than actually going through that whole I've never kissed a girl before conversation, right? And so in this case, you're probably actually doing the girl a favor by just going with it and accepting the awkwardness on yourself instead of sharing the awkwardness on her, right? A lot of people do this where they'll sort of they'll be extra honest about something, or they'll bring up factors that don't really need to go anywhere because they're feeling a lot of awkwardness themselves and they kind of want to share that or put that on the other person. You have to think to yourself, am I actually doing the other person a favor by doing this? By having that long awkward conversation before the kiss, are you actually doing that girl's experience a favor? Probably not. So in that case, I would just say, you know what, go do the best you can. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, then learn from it and go forward. But having that long preamble, if anything, will just probably make it far more awkward rather than less. Now, if this was something else, if this was a situation of I mean, the best example I can come up with is like wilderness survival or something like that. If you legitimately like are lost and don't know where you're going, that's not a time to be like, you know what, I want to be a strong leader because like people respect strong leaders, and then you lead your posse out to like certain death in the wilderness, right? There, the consequences are very extreme. So you want to look at a lot of situations in life and think like, what are the scenarios I'm dealing with? How serious is this, and how important is it that I be perceived a certain way versus how important is it that like we be completely like factually meticulous, right? And in this case, I would say you're overall doing better for the experience by just going for it and doing the best you can, keeping it light and fun and funny, and being willing to joke with the fact after the fact if you mess up. That's the other one too, right? If you say you don't know how to kiss a girl, you try and kiss her, and then it's a little like funny and awkward, that would be a good time to bring it up. And it will probably be even less awkward bringing it up to her then than it would have been if you just done it in the first place. So a lot of things in pickup and in life, if you can get away with it, there's sort of like this like I'll try it chutzpah kind of thing where you just fake it till you make it and go with it, right? But there are areas where that's not true, so consider the consequences. Don't ever take anything as a blanket statement. If I ever tell you something as a piece of advice, understand that that applies to the situation I told it to, and it doesn't apply universally. And understand that every piece of advice, again, key tenets of pickup, you should be thinking for yourself, right? Never should you be taking it without that. Okay, so then let's look at this other question that was asked, which was the question of running the interaction and having it sort of like taper off over time, and then also sort of time frame within the interaction, okay? First off, I'll say that every single interaction is different, and there is no time frame. I have had girls that I've met and had sex with in 5 minutes. I have had girls where it's been over 20 hours of FaceTime over like a week or even 2 weeks before we ended up having sex, right? And I know that's for me as a very like sexual man who is, I tend to be very intentful, and I tend to be very clear with girls about the fact that I am a sexual being and that relationships with me are sexual in nature. For other people that are less intentful, that could even be longer periods of time. I know certain girls I've talked to have, this is an extreme case, I knew one girl who I actually really liked and was considering something with. She told me that she had never had sex with a man she had known for less than a year, right? For me, that was a deal breaker, only because like I wasn't going to spend a year not having sex. Right, I wasn't willing to make that sacrifice, but it is what it is for different people. So timeframes, they vary, and the reason is you have your personal experience and expectations, and she has her personal experience and expectations. So, say my personal experience and expectation is most girls probably have sex with me within a few hours of meeting me. The most typical experience is she goes on several dates with guys, and it takes a long time. Probably, if it works out between us and we have chemistry, it's going to end up being something in the middle, right? Probably I am more intentful, better with girls, hopefully more charismatic and charming, I would hope, after 15 years of this, than the typical guy. And so that timeline is going to be short. And also, I'm very intentful, so the nature of my game is going to lead her to either be, into me sexually on a short timeline or turn it off on a short timeline, which is quite possible as well. But her timeline's a bit longer, so I need to be sensitive to that, right? Any interaction is a dialogue, right? And it's not a monologue. You're not monologuing at the girl and forcing your views on a girl. You're having a dialogue. And so the end result will be the merger between your viewpoint and hers. So typical interaction length, tough to say. Now we're talking typical one-night stand interaction length. That I would say, for me personally, usually not less than 20 minutes. Usually it takes a little bit to like build some comfort, have the girl trust you, willing to go somewhere. But usually not more than like 4 or 5 hours. If for no other reason than most clubs aren't open more than 4 or 5 hours, right? So at some point within that scope of time, you need to be moving things forward, leaving the club with her, having something like that happen. Now, excuse me, that doesn't mean that even if I do take a girl home in 20 minutes, that I have sex with her in 25, right? A lot of times I'll take a girl home and hang out for like, within 25 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour of meeting her, but then we'll spend 4 or 5 hours talking, flirting, kissing, that sort of stuff. And again, there's no need to rush it. In fact, rushing it is just gonna make people uncomfortable, and it's actually gonna mess you up. I have a tenet, which is that 5 minutes of patience up front will usually save you hours on the back end, right? So for example, like you bring a girl back to your place, you don't want to be the guy that like jumps on her and tries to make a sexual move on her right when you get her inside, right? Let her take her time. Let her look around. Let her get comfortable. Let her sort of explore and go at her own pace, right? For a girl, as guys, we're kind of like light switches, right? We're like either attracted or not attracted. We look at a girl and we're like, I would fuck that or I wouldn't fuck that, pretty much, right? That's how we look at it. As girls, like as though I'm a girl, for girls, it's a little bit different, right? I think of it more as like sort of a dimmer switch, right? It's like it's sort of being turned up over time. It's getting brighter and brighter, or it can get turned off over time. But it's not so like 1 and 0, yes or no. And so for the girl, she needs to have an experience. Okay, a great metaphor for this is the metaphor of a movie, right? Which is the last 5 minutes. That's the climax. That's the best part. And so it's tempting, I guess, just fast forward to the climax, right? And as guys, yeah, we're like, fuck it, fast forward to the climax right now, right? But for a girl, and actually, to be honest, like for a guy, you'll probably have a better experience this way too, is if you watch the whole movie, the climactic scenes at the end make more sense and are more meaningful to you because you get to know the characters, you're more invested, there's more tension that's been developed. Okay, so rather than thinking of it in terms of like how long do I have to put or kind of rushing or anything like that, I would think of it in terms of what's the experience like. And you can have an amazing experience within a few minutes, or you can have an amazing experience over several hours. So there is no set time frame in that regard, but there is sort of a set amount of comfort and a set amount of like connection and knowledge of yourself and of the girl that will play into it. But the other thing is what I really want to talk to, which is the why the interactions kind of taper off, right? And that's not actually technically, I think, the question you're trying to ask, but I think it's a really important question. Because it speaks to one of the primary like ideas of pickup, which is play to win rather than playing to not lose. Okay, if you're playing to not lose in pickup, you will almost invariably lose. Right? But what will happen is you will lose over a nice long period of time where you don't experience any real negative emotional spike. Right? What most guys do, think of an interaction as like a fire. You have this burning fire. Right? What most guys do is they just don't put more wood on the fire. Right? They sit back and they're worried that like, oh no, if I put wood on the fire, I might like mess with it, it might blow it out, or I might smother it, or something like that. So they just sit there and don't put any wood on the fire. And when you don't put wood on the fire, you're having what I call the half-hour conversation to nowhere. Right? You're guaranteeing that over time, it's eventually going to peter out. It's eventually going to go nowhere. So what you have to do is you have to take some risks. Right? Put some wood on the fire, and if you put too much wood in it, it kills the fire, say la vie, but at least you gave it a chance to work. All right, so what most guys do, even guys that can be kind of bold and go in and like do their approach, right? First issue most guys have is, I don't want to do the approach, I'm scared. But once you get over that, you get in, hi, I'm talking to this girl, it's going all right, fine, good. And then at some point you're like, oh shit, this is a hot girl, she likes me, I better not mess it up. I better not ruin it. And you kind of just sit back and you hope that you've done enough work that you could just coast over the finish line without making a mistake. You're so afraid of messing up that you stop doing proactive things. As soon as you stop doing proactive things, you're guaranteeing failure, right? So what you want to have actually are interactions that either go really, really well or really, really badly. You don't want the in-between interaction. I ask this to guys a lot of times. I say, what is like the worst interaction you can have with a girl? And a lot of guys emotionally are responding. They say the worst interactions with a girl is, no, thanks, right? And just disses them. That's actually not the worst. At least if you're emotionally strong, that's not the worst. If you let that get to you and ruin your night and you go cry and like go home, then yeah, that's the worst. But as long as you're emotionally strong, that's not the worst interaction. The worst interaction you could actually have for your night would be the girl that you spend 4 hours talking to and then find out at the end she has a boyfriend and isn't interested. Or the girl you spend 4 hours talking to and you find out that like she just viewed you as a friend and was enjoying your conversation. Right? Alex calls this getting used for your personality. Right? It's like the idea like that there's a stereotype that men use women for sex. The stereotype backwards is women use men for their personalities. Right? So that's what you would call that. And what you want to do is you want to avoid that because that's the night killer. Because if you go in and talk to a girl and she blows you out, doesn't like you, that's fine. Not every girl has to like you. But that leaves you the rest of the night to go talk to girls who like you. Right? If you spend a long time in that set going nowhere, that's when it's a problem. So what should you do when the interaction starts tapering off and starts going poorly? Well, the answer is you should do something, right? You should do anything. If you're new to pickup, you won't know what it is, but try something and see if it works, right? And over time, you'll start to learn what does work. And typically what does work there is anything that's emotional in nature, anything that has something like an emotional spike to it, okay? So some kind of positive expression. You know what, you're so cute, I really like talking to you. That could work. That works actually a lot of the time. Something like some kind of negative expression like teasing her. You're like, oh my God, you're such a dork. I love you, but you're such a dork, right? Some sort of teasing or flirtation could work in that case. Pretty much anything that is either an I statement or a you statement has a chance of working. But talking about random topics that don't address the fact that you're a man and a woman and that something could happen between you will not work. All right, so what you need to do is take that risk and say, you know what? I can succeed or fail, but whether I succeed or fail, it's going to be me that succeeded or failed. It's not going to be like I left it up to random chance and the world happened to me, all right? Another great general premise of pickup, the more you do to the environment, the less the environment does to you. All right, so a lot of guys, they go to a club and they get intimidated by all the things that are happening. They get intimidated by like the loud music and like the big alpha guys and like the hot girls running around in cocktail dresses, and they just sit there and let the club put them in their head, right? If by contrast to that, they just took action and talked to somebody, whether it be a girl, whether it be the bouncer, whether it be like the bartender, whatever, and take some action, they get themselves out of their head. Also, by taking action, it's just better for your soul, right? One of the key understandings that I developed when I first came into pickup was this. I said, I may regret things that I've done in life, but I have chosen not to regret things that I haven't done. Right? And I think that's an easier way to live life, and I think it's better for the soul. If you say, look, I took a risk and it didn't work and I can live with that, that's fine. But if you sit there thinking, I was too much of a little bitch to take action, I was too weak to step up and go after what I wanted, that's very hard to do. That's a hard pill to swallow for yourself. So I would say never give that to yourself. Go out there and get experience. And lastly, if you are doing proactive things, you're going to get better feedback. If you're sitting and waiting for the environment to do things to you, it's going to be very hard for your brain to find patterns in your results. But if you're doing things, if you're taking proactive steps in the environment, your brain's going to find those patterns, going to find those results, okay? So what I encourage you to do, if that's happening, when you notice that the set's getting worse, do something, right? And do something bold, right? If you make a mistake by being bold, you can usually correct it by doing something else bold or by apologizing. But if you make little, small moves that aren't really noticed, that don't like snap you out of your comfort zone or make a difference, that's not so good, right? Also, there's this idea of like value and comfort. You guys are familiar with the idea of value and comfort in pickup, yeah? Yeah. Okay, so why is it that in cold approach pickup, we typically do value first and then comfort? Do you guys understand why this is? Yeah? All right? Okay, so basically it's because you need value to keep the girl there. Right? She doesn't know you from some stranger on the street, so if you don't have value, she won't stay. If you have value, if she believes you're cool but doesn't trust you, she'll stay for the show. She'll stay for the entertainment, she'll stay for the emotional arousal. She just won't want to go home with you at the end of the night or maybe give you a phone number. But then that gives you time to build comfort, and comfort's built over time. So you need that value to build that time, right? That's why making an audacious move is okay, even if it destroys a little bit of comfort. Now, if you make someone massively uncomfortable, back off, apologize, etc., right? But it's better to make the audacious move, beg for forgiveness, than to have to ask for permission, right? So that's the general idea, that you need to make strong moves, but then be calibrated and know where you're at. All right, let's talk a little bit about structure for the date, the most controversial closing question of the set. Structure for the date, my personal philosophy on dating is that traditional dating sucks, right? I had in one of my online profiles that I wrote, basically, and a quick product plug, check out 3girlsaday.com, online dating system, it's amazing. But yeah, so in one of my online profiles that I wrote a long time ago, I said, sadly, I don't do dates, never have, never will. I do rendezvous and drinks, right? And a lot of girls would ask me, what's the difference between a rendezvous and a date, right? And my sort of flippant answer that I came up with, which actually wasn't even the best game, but it just kind of amused me to say, is I would say about 500 years of social expectation and norms, right? Which is once you call something a date, you're putting yourself into the traditional dating frame. You're putting yourself into the frame of the girl is on a pedestal, let me court her, bring her flowers, open doors, try and like bribe my way into her heart, right? And that's what a lot of guys do. And the funny thing is, like, people consider like pickup to be manipulative, but really that's like the most manipulative thing you can do is like, I'm trying to bribe in my way in your heart. I'm trying to like hide the fact that I like you and, you know, give you false compliments and give you a bunch of gifts so that hopefully you'll be like, oh, he gave me so many gifts, I guess I owe it to him to have sex with him, right? That's like traditional dating, and that's why I hate it. I hate it for that reason of it being so sort of like put on and fake, but I also hate it for the fact that typically within the traditional dating frame, it does take several dates to have sex with a girl, because she's evaluating you not for, would this be a fun time? Would this be a good experience for both of us? She's evaluating this as like, is this a husband? All right, so you're putting yourself up to a very like harsh metric in terms of that as well. So I like to date on my own terms. So typical rules for me for dating are, and this is very like, it's very draconian. It's very like sort of harsh dating rules. And the reason I have harsh dating rules is that I have no trouble getting dates, right? If I could only get one date every 6 months and some girl was like, I'll go out with you, but you have to do this, 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 and this, I'd probably be like, sure, baby, anything for you, whatever you want, I'm there. Like, oh, you want a car? Okay, cool, right? But because I have abundance, because I can see, like, again, name of the product, 3 girls a day. The reason I got named that is because when I was hitting online dating very hard, I was literally going on 3 dates a day. So because I have that abundance, I won't take like bad dates, if that makes sense. So one of my criteria for dates is that if I make a reasonable plan for the date and she gives me an unreasonable objection, I will just drop the date, right? Because in my experience, if I say, hey, let's go for a drink at this bar that I know, and you know, it's a really fun time, etc. If she really wants to see you, if she's really into you for you, probably she'll have no problem doing that, right? And if she's not into you that much, then there's something wrong in your process, right? In your process, you should be getting the girl into you, even chasing you a bit, but certainly into the idea of meeting you. The biggest event on the date shouldn't be that you're off doing some activity. Excuse me. The biggest event of the day should be that 2 really cool people are meeting each other. So that needs to be the premise. The premise isn't like, oh, let's go on this like crazy you know, let's go on a hot air balloon ride together or something like that, or let's go like do some like crazy show experience, whatever. Now, if you want to do that kind of stuff, if you enjoy it for your own sake, fine, totally okay. But you shouldn't feel the need to do that, right? The idea of like, let's just hang out should be enough if you've done your work properly. So if a girl says no to that, I usually say, oh, you know what, it sounds like you're pretty busy. Let's just do it at night when you actually have some free time. And I'll just cut it off. And what happens a shocking amount of time, especially with hot girls, is they're not used to that. They're not used to you like dropping plans and be like, look, you know, if you're not that into it, then, you know, don't worry about it. They're not used to a guy having that kind of abundance. And so a lot of times they'll come around and be like, oh, actually, you know what, my schedule just freed up, but I think I can, right? And so the reason I do that is, number one, because a lot of times it works, right? You want to do what works. But also I've noticed that when the girl gives you bullshit on planning the date, she usually gives you bullshit on the date, right? She usually is in that traditional dating frame, is in that role of like, what are you going to do to impress me? I have this, and this rules, that kind of stuff. And this is not the type of girls I'm interested in, and it's certainly not the type of dates that are going to go very well and lead to like sex on the first date, right? If that's what you're after. It's a bit of a screening process. And this is a personal belief of mine, not one you have to have. But I do believe that it's normal and natural for, well, actually, this one you do have to have. It's normal and natural for men and women to have sex. It is. There are 7 billion people on the planet, and there's a reason for that. It is normal and natural for men and women to have sex. My personal belief is it's normal and natural for men and women to have sex quickly, right? Because once 2 people like each other in like the modern age, there's not that much consequence for having like protected sex with someone, right? You have sex with a condom, pretty safe, not that big of a deal. It can happen pretty early. The girl has decided she likes me, and because she decided she likes me, she decides she wants to make me wait, right? This happens a lot of times. Actually, here's a phenomenon that a lot of people are not familiar with, but this happens as you get better in game, especially if you're successful at life, which is that you'll have a girl who's really, really into you, ready to like go home with you, go do anything with you, go have some crazy adventure with you, and then you mention some kind of resume detail that's a little bit impressive. You mention you own your own company. You mention you travel a lot. You mention something like that, and all of a sudden you see the girl's eyes light up. And she's like, oh, wow, this is like a winner. This guy is like the type of guy who I'd consider something serious with. And all of a sudden, she's like, you know what? I'm going to make this guy wait. So I'll be like on my way home, like walking a girl home, we've made out, everything's like ready to go. And she'll be like, you know what? Take my number. I want you to take me on a date. Like, what? What just happened? What? No, that's fine. Yeah, I want to take you on a date. I like you. I'd love to see you. Let's go hang out now, and then yeah, I'd love to take you on a date as well, right? And I would too, right? If I really like a girl, I'll take a girl on a date that I like, right? But the idea that it's like, stop, let's not have fun together because now I like you more, that's very off-putting, right? And so what you want to try and maintain in your frame, in your vibe, and it is kind of your job. It's your job to convey honestly what you want and to convey honestly who you are, right? If you honestly are a guy who wants to have sex on the first date, if you honestly are a guy who wants to have one-night stands and isn't necessarily, maybe you are looking for a relationship once you get to know someone, but isn't looking for a relationship like right away, it's your job to convey that. You convey the opposite, it's your fault that the girl buys into the opposite, right? So what I try and avoid a lot of times is conveying these sort of resume things or these like provider relationship-y husband-wife type of frames. Instead, I frame it all as let's have fun and see what happens, right? Let's just have fun, let the grown-ups handle the serious stuff, that kind of stuff. And that frame is much more honest if that's what you're going for. And then the other things that you want to do are you want to make sure that we talked a little bit early on about the idea of it just happened, right? It just happened. You want to help it just happen. So you want to like have kind of a game plan for after like maybe you go get a drink, what are other places you could go, things like that, so that you can make it smoother for her. If at the end of the night you're kind of both sitting there and you're like, well, we like each other, what now? And it's kind of awkward. Most of the time the girl doesn't want that awkwardness because she doesn't want to feel like she was like, you know, the slutty girl that wanted sex. She wants to feel like, oh, I was just swept up in the moment, one thing led to another, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to allow her that experience. Allow her the experience of being the dominant man who takes charge and leads, right? Now, obviously, like the prerequisite for all this is she has to like you, right? If she doesn't like you, she's not going anywhere with you regardless, right? There's no way to like trick a girl who doesn't like you into going home with you. There's no way to like trick a girl who doesn't like you into having sex with you. If she does like you, you can do her the favor of getting out of her way a little bit and allowing her that experience, right? Not making it her fault, having a game plan in mind so she can kind of just like enjoy the ride and enjoy the experience instead of having to be like, okay, look, fine, let me plan this all out, right? I mean, it's just part of giving someone a good journey. It's like if you went to a nice hotel, you would expect like the concierge to like take your bags up and you'd expect them to have like some kind of itinerary and recommendations for places you could go, right? That's part of what good hospitality is. If you're taking a girl on a date, part of good hospitality is helping her, if she's into you, helping her to go on that journey towards sex, if that's where you're going, or at least towards getting to know each other better, right? So that's very important. So what I recommend is date on your own terms, right? And if you do get bullshit, tend to cut those off. A lot of times they will reschedule. Like it's very shocking how few of the ones that you cut off plans with actually end up being cut off. A lot of times they do come back around. If you want to have sex on the first date, go on the first date somewhere where sex is a possibility, right? Like not necessarily like your bedroom for the first date, that's sex is a possibility, but I mean like somewhere that's near enough to you or near enough to some place like that it could work. For example, if you meet half an hour from where both of you live and you both drove separate cars, it's a little awkward for that to go down, right? So you want to, at least allow for the possibility of all that. So that's the logistical type of stuff. What were the other, I think there were 2 more questions that got asked. Who asked questions that hasn't had them answered yet in this room? Yeah.
About motivation.
Oh, yeah, long-term motivation. Okay, so I kind of made the flippant joke about getting hornier. And that still stands a little bit, right? I mean, like, 2 things. Number one, if you're getting to a point where you're going out so much that you're going out for the process itself and like the learning, or you're going out and like you're turning it into work, right? There's a great phrase Jeffy said is like, there's a reason they call it the game and not the work, right? If it becomes work, it's just not a good thing, okay? So keep it fun. If you get to the point where it is no longer fun, find a way to make it fun, right? A lot of guys, especially when you learn from me, I'm a fairly technical instructor. A lot of like, here's technically what to do, here's what not to do, etc. It's easy with a lot of information to get a little bit in your head or to get to where you're like trying to like get this one sticky point handled and that kind of thing. If at any point you look up and notice that the game is no longer fun for you, you may be overtraining. And if that's the case, drop technique a little bit, be willing to mess it up, but make your priority having fun, right? So a lot of times I'll give students the assignment, go out and game to fail. I'll say, you know what, the next group that you talk to, you have to fail, right? You must fail. You are not allowed to take a girl home. You're not allowed to get a number. You must fail. You're not allowed. And if you start to succeed, you have to do it. You have to make it fail, right? But the other thing is you must fail in a creative way. You can't fail like through lack of effort. You can't just walk over and be like, and just stand in silence and fail, right? You have to do something creative. You have to actively fail. And funny enough, a lot of times what will happen is a student's been going out like, 4, 5, 6 groups in a row, and every single girl they talk to is just, no, not having it, hate it, whatever. And then they go in and try to fail. All of a sudden, like, they're talking to this girl for half an hour. And I'm like, you idiot, you just failed at failing, good job, right? But the fact of the matter is once they release from the outcome, they become much more attractive, right? And so it's nice in a way that, first of all, releasing from the outcome is fun, but secondly, it's part of the game. If the game gets too serious, you lose that, right? The other thing that can happen a lot when you go regularly, there's this phenomenon called yesterday's epiphany is tomorrow's crutch. You guys ever heard this? This was a Tyler video a long time ago. Yesterday's epiphany is tomorrow's crutch. The idea is you come up with this great technique, this amazing thing that works so well, and you're excited about it. And so you use it again and again, and it keeps working. It keeps working even better because you get better and better at it, and you're excited about it. And then over time, you start to use it not because it's fun for you or because you're excited about it, because like, oh, this is the thing that works, so let me use it because it works. And if you start doing it because it works instead of because it's fun, all of a sudden it starts being less effective for you, right? And then you get even less excited about it, and then you keep doing it. It's like, this used to work. Why isn't it working? And then it falls flat on its face and it makes you massively unattractive, almost can't work, right? And so what can happen is if you're going out a lot, is you sort of start to develop a bit of a shtick, right? You start to develop these same lines that you're saying over and over again, right? I've noticed this happens to me if I'm on like, consecutive boot camps, especially for a long period of time. I'm doing a ton of sets, and I'm doing them to try and like make them work. So I want it to look good for the students, that kind of stuff. And there's not soul behind it, because I'm not actually trying to sleep with the girls. I'm just trying to help my students. So what happens is it's very easy to develop like a shtick, and it's very easy to keep repeating the same things over and over again that worked before. And what you find is all of a sudden they stop working. So the other thing I would recommend if you're going out a lot is as soon as you say something that is boring to you, like you've said it before, or like not creative or not keeping you mentally engaged, or kind of like switching off and just saying the obvious thing, as soon as you notice yourself doing that, stop doing it and say anything else, even if it's worst game. Okay, one of the biggest lessons I learned from seeing myself on film was this. Right, there's this this girl that I picked up in New York City, where basically it was sort of the end of the night. I was kind of feeling I'd been doing too much pickup, and I walked over to her, and I was about to, I don't even know, it's like some kind of like where are you going right now? Like what are you doing right this exact second? There's a reason why I asked, which is actually a great line. But I started to say it, and then I was like, you know what? I'm bored right now. I'm bored with my own interaction. And so at that moment, I just said, you know what? I'm asking you a question. I actually don't even care about the answer, right? Which is actually not even a good game. Like, why would you even say that? It doesn't even make sense. But what it did is it brought me presence in the interaction. It made me actually have a real conversation with her, as opposed to spitting pickup lines at her, right? And the interaction went really well from there. There was another line later on where I was like, you literally have like the most expressive face I've ever seen, which is a line that I've said like in one form or another to so many girls. It's a very good line, right? It makes them think about themselves. It makes it man to woman. It shows that you're curious about them, trying to get to know them, etc. But I was saying it like from like rote memory and repetition because I was just being lazy. So what I did, she's like, well, really? And actually was intrigued, and the line went well, it went fine. But then at that moment, I was bored. So I said, actually, no, I don't even know why I said that, right? And I brought myself to a conversation that I was actually present in, right? And this can happen when you're going out a lot, is you start to become a little too mechanical. So when that happens, remember that it's not about what you do, it's about the reason behind why you're doing it, right? So the same two people can say the exact same line. If one person says it with true meaning behind it and true like positive intent to have a good interaction, it will be received well. If the other person says it to push a button and get a reaction, it will usually be received poorly. Right? So it's more about where you're coming from than it is about what you're doing. And in fact, I've seen all these behaviors from students that like should never work, but it works because they're doing it from such a positive place, right? Or they're doing it with a lot of confidence. This is another one. This is a really weird like boot camp phenomenon, which is like a lot of times I'll give a student some advice. I'll say, go do this thing instead. And they completely misunderstand what I say. and they do something that is so awkward and should never work, and I sit there like, oh God, oh boy, right? And then funny enough, it works. And the reason why it works a lot of times, and like once I explain it to them what they did and explain the real thing to them, then if they were to do it, it would fail. But the reason it worked is because they were so confident that because I told them to do it, it would work, because of my authority, and because they've seen me do like amazing things before. They bought into it, and they just did it with full belief and full positive intention. And no matter how awkward it is, they made it work by believing. Right? And so again, remember, it's where it's coming from, right? So again, if you're getting too mechanical, or if like you're not motivated, or you feel kind of blasé, change your focus from inside of yourself to outside. Change your focus to, instead of like trying to get a good result, change your focus to, tonight my mission is to find out as much about this girl as I can. Right? Almost as though you're composing like a dossier on her. Like you're like, you know what, I want to find out who this girl is on a deep, deep level. And you're like trying to like develop a genuine connection. That'll get you outside of your head because you're focusing on her. It also will nicely, conveniently help you build comfort with the girl and have a better interaction. Right? But you want to focus outside of yourself. As soon as you're focused internally, that's going to be a problem as well. I still feel like there's one other question I didn't address though.
Grounding?
Oh, grounding from the, yeah. How to be grounded. This is kind of an interesting question because it's something I never really personally had as big of a problem with, because I'm a natural introvert and I'm naturally very thoughtful. So I've always kind of personally come from a bit of a serious place, and I always have been a little bit grounded, at least like fundamentally. However, there was a long period in game where I would tend to care a lot about what people thought about me. All right. There's another. Did I mention the concept yet of like filters and insecurity? Did I say that today yet? Okay, cool. It's something I actually wanted to talk about, so that's good. There's a great concept. It's actually Jeff originally came up with this concept. It's called filters of insecurity. And what the idea of filters of insecurity is that when you're listening to someone, you don't hear what they're saying. You don't. Because what you hear is what they're saying filtered through your perception of the world. Okay, so if your perception of the world is I'm amazing, you're hearing what they're saying through the filter of I'm amazing. If your filter of the world is I'm a loser, you're hearing what they're saying through this filter of I'm a loser, right? And you'll even like think that people said things that don't even make sense because of like your filter, right? One example that really stands out for me is like such an embarrassing, awkward moment for me. It was when I was in college, and I'd been learning pickup for a while, and I was on the college soccer team. There was this one kid on the soccer team. Actually, there were two kids on the soccer team that had really, really good game with girls, but this was one of them. And it turned out he had a crush on this particular girl he thought was really hot. And it just so happened, because I did a lot of cold approach, I actually had a date scheduled with that girl. Just because I had done an approach. She was a nice girl, and she agreed to go on a date with me. The date actually never went anywhere, but he was very impressed. He was very impressed that I had gotten a date with this girl, and et cetera. So then at soccer practice, like the following, after that weekend, when we came back and had soccer practice, I was in line for like a drill, and he came up and he's like, "What's up, player?" Right? "What's up, player?" And I really love this guy's respect. This is a guy who like I envied and respected as a man, and I was like really in awe of him, and especially as like his like skills with women. I was like, wow, this guy's amazing. And the fact that he was giving me like props, it would have been like really great for me. But I was still at that time in life coming through a filter of insecurity, where like I viewed it as like what I was doing in pickup was a little nefarious. It was like a little bit wrong, and I didn't feel myself as being that good with girls yet. And so I literally heard, "What's up, Claire?" as in the female name Claire, instead of "What's up, Claire?" I'm like, "What? Why are you calling me Claire?" And I like, gave him like a weird look, and like looked pissed off, and like went and got in line for the drill, and just like ignited. So this guy who like whose respect I really craved, and like would have loved to have talked to him about like pickup and girls, and like, you know, going out with him and that kind of stuff. But instead, I was too weird about it because I was fundamentally insecure. Right, so I was filtering through insecurity. I didn't even hear what he said. I heard something different, and that'll happen a lot. And so, a lot of grounding is not being so susceptible to the environment, but understanding fundamentally who you are. Understanding that there's two types of confidence. There's situational confidence and core confidence. Situational confidence is the confidence of, you know, I've been to this club before, I've been in this situation before, So because I have positive feedback and because I have reference experiences, I can be positive and confident in this one scenario. Poor confidence is when you say, I've had enough positive references in life, or I've thought through my life and I fundamentally believe what I believe strongly enough that I'm confident in every situation, right? And that's core confidence. That's what you really want to strive for. So that it's not like, you know, every time you walk into a new club or new establishment, you're like, oh shit, can I be confident here? Can I be confident in this situation? Instead, you're like, look, I can be confident in the world. I have enough positive reference experiences. So the way that you get that is, number one, get a lot of positive reference experiences, which means go out, have social interactions, that kind of stuff. Secondly, when you're in those situations, focus on the positive, right? Another thing that a lot of people do through filters of insecurity is whenever their self-perception is, they're looking for evidence to back up that self-perception. Right? So there are certain guys, they'll go out and they'll game one night, and they'll have like 19 girls out of 20 really like them. The 20th girl says, fuck off. And they'll forget like the 10 phone numbers they have and all the great interactions. Like, that girl hated me. Why do I suck at life? Right? And they'll be really miserable because they're focusing on that one negative. There'll be other guys that will have like 19 bad interactions, especially newbies, and they'll have that one girl smile at them. They're like, that girl smiled at me. This is awesome. It's working. And that's a little delusional the other way. But the fact that they're focusing on the positive, it will actually help them much more than focusing on the negative will. Right? So focusing on the positive and finding reasons for what you know to be true, and especially reasons for positive things about yourself of what you know to be true, will really help you. And then lastly is fundamentally understand why you are of value and fundamentally understand what your proposition is to the girl. Right? Understand that when you walk over to a girl, you are not imposing on her. Right? You are interrupting her a little bit, maybe, but you're not imposing on her. What you're doing is you're offering her a tremendous value. You're offering her an amazing man. Right? You're offering her an opportunity to have someone care about her, love her, have amazing experiences with her, et cetera, et cetera. Now, it's her right if she wants to like, you know, I would believe foolishly, reject that, right? It's her right to reject that if she wants. But the fact of the matter is you're making a positive offer, right? And the very fact that you understand that at your core, you understand that if she says no to you, she's the one who lost out because she lost out on the amazing experience that you could provide. That fundamentally will help you to be grounded as well, okay? And the other thing that will help you be grounded, and this one, I'm sorry, you have to go and feel for it as well, is just having had a lot of experience with social pressure, right? The first time I had to get on stage to make a speech, I was terrified, right? And I had like hours of content prepared, and I was so nervous even then. Now I can go on speech for like, you know, hour, 2 hours, whatever, and nothing prepared, and just like, you know, I'll come up with something. It's not a big deal, right? Why is that? It's because I've done it a lot of times. I have positive reference experience of doing it, but also it's the fact that I dealt with that pressure, and so I'm used to having those chemicals in my body, right? Fear literally is the same thing as adrenaline. Fear and excitement are almost the same chemical, right? Why are roller coasters exciting? It's because they're scary, right? But that's a positive in the sense of a roller coaster. We're talking in a social interaction, it's framed as a negative, right? But if you get used to those chemicals and you realize often enough that when you go on stage, when you go talk to a girl, when you put yourself outside your comfort zone, you get a positive from it instead of a negative. All of a sudden, instead of being afraid, you'll be excited. You'll be aroused in a positive way. So just getting that reference experience is really, really, really helpful. Any other questions we have kind of lingering before we go to the internet for some topics? Okay, cool. Say some Twitter and Facebook questions.
2 questions from Twitter. The first, how to not lose your cool when a girl is showing signs of interest.
Okay.
Second, should you hide the fact that you're inexperienced when meeting women, or is it better to be honest?
Okay, that's similar, I guess, to the kissing question, right? Which is, I would say on the should you hide the fact that you're inexperienced or just be honest with it. I would say fake it till you make it, but then be honest if need be. And again, the reason is not that dishonesty is inherently good or anything like that, but the fact is you don't need to burden the girl with that information. If she's gonna have a good experience with you, let her have a good experience without putting a lot of pressure on it and without like narrating it. Allow it to just happen as much as you possibly can. Now, if for whatever reason, like it starts to be clunky and it starts to be awkward and that becomes the elephant in the room, of course at that point be like, hey, look, I really am pretty nervous around you and I don't really know what to say. I don't do this that often, but I do really like you. and then that genuineness can be very attractive, right? So in that case, it could be. The other time that it could be a good idea is if the nervousness is not about genuine or disingenuous, it's about like it's keeping you from acting, it's paralyzing you. If that nervousness is paralyzing you, a lot of times it's good to give yourself the excuse of, you know what, I'm just going to narrate and it's okay. I had a student in Australia a couple of years ago where that was the case. He was extremely nervous talking to girls because he was very much of a perfectionist. He wanted to have the right thing to say. And so what I told him is just narrate whatever's in your head. Go up and just tell her that you're nervous talking to her and that you don't know what to say and you're even scared. And then he started doing this, and what happened was two things. Number one, he was genuine enough that girls would interact with him. They weren't necessarily like, I want to have sex with you, but they would at least interact with him. They'd give him a little bit of a platform to talk. And from there, then he could move it forward. And the nice thing was, once he got that positive interaction, he got a little unstifled. He got a little bit more confident and more smooth and fluid. And then after a little bit of doing that, he didn't feel the need to anymore. Didn't feel the need to rely on it as a crutch. So in that case, it could be really good too. So if the fact of your inexperience is making things more awkward or worse for you or for her, in that case, go ahead and bring it out. But if it's not, do what you can to make the experience as good as possible. So again, it's not about like, disclosing this, disclosing that. At least in this case, there are things you definitely should disclose, obviously, right? Important stuff. But focus on the experience first and foremost. Make sure that it's a good experience for everybody. That should be your prime consideration. And then worrying about like being meticulous about every detail of your life should be secondary to that. Again, with the caveat that you're not hurting anyone. Okay, you're never hurting anyone. You're trying to make it positive for everyone. That's the key idea over and over and over again. And the other one was how
to not lose your cool when a girl is showing signs of interest.
How to not lose your cool. Okay, this is interesting because a lot of times I expected when you said show signs, I expected you to say show signs of like disinterest, right? Because that's when a lot of guys lose their cool. Is the girls like getting up in their face. How do you not lose your cool there? And that goes back to being grounded. And that goes back to like having that experience and having that sort of core confidence rather than just situational confidence. So you're not at the mercy of the whims. But how to keep your cool when a girl shows interest? Well, first and foremost, experience helps. Sorry to tell you, it does, right? If you've had sex with lots of girls, if you've taken lots of girls home, if you've just interacted in general with lots of girls who have been into you, it won't seem like such a big deal, right? There's this idea of like act like you've been there before, right? If a white scores a touchdown, it's totally normal, and like he's pretty confident about it. He'll do his little dance and he'll get on with life. But then if like the tight end, or let's say tight end score touchdowns too, if the defensive like lineman or whatever picks up a fumble and runs it in for a touchdown, a lot of times he'll be like, he'll like stop the game, give the game ball to his mother, and like do a dance for like 20 minutes, right? And the reason being, he's probably never going to score another touchdown in his career, right? So for him, it's a really big deal, and he had it before. It's a little too put on. So the big thing is act like you've been there before, and ideally be there before. Okay. So ideally, like be there before and be used to that. But beyond that, understand that your work is kind of done in a way. Okay, a lot of guys run into this problem of what I call overgaming. Right, what they do is they go in and they're very charismatic, they're very high energy, and by being high energy, they get a positive reaction. And then they think that because being high energy is what got them that positive interaction or that positive reaction, that now they have to continue being high energy and continue being like dancing monkey and entertainer and all that kind of stuff. For me, as soon as a girl shows interest in me, as soon as a girl asks me questions, at that moment I sort of like exhale and relax. And I think to myself, all right, work is done here. Now that's not actually true, right? There's still several hours of interaction. There's still getting to know the girl. There's still all these very important things. But at that moment, you no longer have to be a pickup guy. You no longer have to try to keep her attention. You no longer have to go outside of yourself in order to give her an experience, right? So let me clarify that point a little bit, which is that pickup's interesting because when you're meeting someone, they get a brief sample of your personality, and so they're not experiencing your whole personality yet. It's your job to be interesting and engaging and entertaining enough and like high value enough that they're going to stay long enough to get to know your whole personality. As soon as they're showing interest in you, you should think, now I have time. Now I can show my personality patiently. Now I can lay back and really be genuine and get to know the girl. And so it's time to put the brakes on anything sort of technique-y or anything try-hard, right? It's time to lay back. And so what I recommend is actually taking that breath and laying back and focusing on letting the girl talk, letting the girl open up, and making it as mutual as possible, right? And making it not a situation where you're talking at the girl or trying to get something from the girl, but a situation of true, genuine interaction. I also would encourage, at that point, not doing so much like negative expression, right? We talk about like push-pull and positives and negatives and ranges of emotion. And that, again, helps you early on because you have to get attention a little bit, right? Because she doesn't know you yet. You have to convey that you're an attractive man very quickly. So you put yourself and her in sort of an intense situation. Otherwise, she won't spend the time to get to know you. But again, once she's opened up and trying to get to know you, showing interest, it's time to lay back, be genuine. And this is what you worked for. Understand that's what you actually worked for. That's what you're going for, right? So relax. And understand also that at this point, it's a function of time more than anything else. It's not about doing more great things. It's a function of like, she already likes you. Put in your time with her, be patient, and just don't mess anything up. So that would be my advice to you guys there. Okay, that was actually the last question we're going to take for today's seminar. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I want to remind you guys to tune into the next one. We will be putting it out the same way we did here. So keep a lookout on social media and keep a look at your email. Also, I want to remind you, Valentine University, my brand new product, will be launching on the 25th of November. So that's coming very, very soon. So keep an eye out for that as well. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Thank you for the comments and for the questions. Take care. Until next time.